A billionaire parked his Bentley in a community garden lot by mistake. The woman on her knees in the dirt never looked up. 2 hours later, he sat in his car, staring at a number on his phone. It was not his account balance. Not a message from his assistant. Not a financial report. It was a list of 6 names, 6 families, and a truth he could not walk away from. Because the woman in the dirt had built something his billions never could. And it was about to change everything he believed about success, community, and himself. 41-year-old Leon Bradley woke up every morning on the 38th floor of a Back Bay penthouse that cost more than most families would earn in 3 lifetimes. His bedroom windows stretched 9 feet high, overlooking the Charles River like a painting he never stopped to admire. The walnut desk in his home office cost $22,000, custom-built, hand-polished. He signed contracts on it worth more than entire neighborhoods. As CEO of Bradley Ventures, a commercial real estate empire valued at $4.7 billion, Leon had reshaped skylines across 6 cities, shopping centers, office towers, luxury condominiums with rooftop pools and concierge services that anticipated needs before residents could name them. His name sat etched into cornerstones and brass plaques on buildings from Boston to Charlotte. He owned 3 cars, a penthouse, a vacation property in the Bahamas he visited once a year and forgot about the rest. His suits were tailored in Milan. His shoes were handmade in London. His calendar was managed by an assistant named Corinne, who scheduled his life in 15-minute increments and guarded his time like a vault. Yet every morning Leon stood at that 9-foot window with coffee that cost $14 a cup and felt something hollow pressing against the inside of his ribs. Not sadness, not loneliness, something worse. The quiet absence of meaning, like an office building with every light on, but nobody inside. He had a mentor once, Reginald Odom, a real estate developer who had taken Leon under his wing when he was 23 and hungry and willing to sleep on office floors if it meant closing one more deal. Reginald had taught him everything. How to read a balance sheet like a novel. How to spot a neighborhood about to turn before anyone else smelled the money. How to build systems that outlasted personalities. But Reginald had also drilled one philosophy so deep into Leon that it became bone. Impact is measured in scale, Leon. One person helping one person is a beautiful story. But it is not a strategy. It is a band-aid on a bullet wound. Reginald died 4 years ago. Heart attack at 67. Collapsed at a fundraiser for urban housing. The irony was not lost on Leon, but he buried it quickly, the way he buried most things that threatened to slow him down. That April morning, Leon was running 12 minutes behind schedule. He had a 9 o'clock meeting with the Boston City Council Planning Committee about the Dorchester Redevelopment Project, Phase 1, a 14-block stretch of low-income housing and vacant lots that Bradley Ventures planned to transform into a mixed-use commercial district. Retail, offices, market-rate apartments. The kind of development that looked beautiful in renderings and erased entire communities in reality. Leon did not think of it that way. He thought of it as progress, as scale, as impact measured the way Reginald taught him. His driver was out sick. Corinne had offered to call a car service, but Leon waved her off. He would drive himself. The Bentley Continental GT sat in the underground garage like a sleeping animal. $250,000 of hand-stitched leather and engineered silence. He slid behind the wheel, pressed the ignition, and pulled into morning traffic. His phone buzzed against the center console. Corinne. 3 messages from investors, 2 from the legal team about zoning permits, 1 from a journalist requesting comment on community opposition to the Dorchester project. Community opposition. Leon deleted the notification without reading it. The GPS guided him south through streets that grew narrower and rougher with every mile. Back Bay's brownstones gave way to triple-deckers with peeling paint. Manicured sidewalks turned into cracked concrete, with weeds pushing through. Storefronts shifted from artisan coffee shops to check-cashing places and dollar stores with barred windows. Leon watched it all through tinted glass. Climate-controlled air humming softly around him, leather seat warm against his back. The neighborhood passed by his windows like footage on a screen. Something happening to someone else. Somewhere far away, Reginald's voice murmured in his memory. You cannot save people one at a time, Leon. That is not how the world changes. The world changes when you build something bigger than any single person. Leon believed that. He had built his entire life on that belief. Every decision, every dollar, every demolished building and rebuilt skyline, all of it pointed in one direction. Scale, system, structure. He had never once stopped to wonder what got crushed underneath. The GPS said turn right in 400 feet. Leon signaled and turned the wheel, leather gloves gripping soft as butter. The Bentley rolled into Dorchester. And something about the air shifted, though he would not have been able to name it. Not yet. Not until he saw her. But before that morning makes sense, before the garden and the dirt and the woman on her knees, there is something else to understand about Leon Bradley. Something buried deep beneath the penthouse and the billions and the buildings with his name on them. Something he had spent 20 years trying to forget. Leon was not born wealthy. He was born in Roxbury, 3 miles and an entire universe away from Back Bay. His mother, Celia Bradley, was a night shift nurse at Boston Medical Center. Worked doubles 3 times a week, came home smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion, but always had dinner on the table by the time Leon got home from school. His father, Gerald, was a plumber. Union man, hands like leather, back bent from 30 years of crawling under houses. Gerald did not talk much, but when he worked with a kind of quiet dignity that Leon only understood decades later. They rented a narrow 2-story house on Dudley Street, peeling yellow paint, a backyard the size of a parking space. And in that backyard, Celia Bradley grew tomatoes. Not fancy tomatoes, not heirloom varieties from a catalog. Just regular tomatoes in plastic buckets and old tires filled with dirt she hauled from a vacant lot 2 blocks over. She watered them every morning before her shift, talked to them like children, and every August when they ripened fat and red and warm from the sun, she would slice them on the kitchen counter and fill 3 paper bags. One for Miss Yvonne next door, who had diabetes and could not get to the grocery store easily. One for the Walters family across the street, 4 kids and a father working 2 jobs. One for old Mr. Clarence on the corner, who lived alone and sometimes forgot to eat. Celia never called it charity. She never called it anything. She just handed over the bags and said tomatoes came in good this year. Want some? Leon remembered those August mornings. The smell of warm fruit and damp soil. His mother's hands stained red from slicing. The way Miss Yvonne would smile and say, "Girl, these are better than the store." The way the Walters kids would eat tomato slices like candy juice running down their chins. He remembered it the way people remember the sound of rain on a roof they no longer live under. Distant, beautiful, gone. Celia died when Leon was 19. Breast cancer. Diagnosed too late because she kept postponing her own doctor appointments to cover extra shifts. Gerald fell apart slowly, then all at once. Started drinking. Stopped working. Lost the house on Dudley Street within 18 months. Leon survived on a scholarship to Boston University. Business major. Worked nights at a warehouse, loading trucks to cover what the scholarship did not. Slept 4 hours. Studied 6. 8 meals he could afford, which meant peanut butter on bread and coffee from the campus dining hall. He met Reginald Odom at a real estate networking event his junior year. Leon had no business being there. He wore a borrowed blazer that did not fit and shoes with cardboard tucked inside to cover the holes. But he shook Reginald's hand, looked him in the eye, and said something the older man never forgot. "I do not want to build buildings, sir. I want to build systems that make buildings inevitable." Reginald saw something in Leon that night. Hunger, yes. But more than hunger, architecture. The ability to see how pieces fit together before anyone else could see the pieces at all. He took Leon in, taught him, shaped him, and slowly, carefully, without either of them fully noticing, he replaced every value Celia had planted in her son with a different operating system. Scale over intimacy, systems over relationships, impact measured in square footage, and revenue not in paper bags full of tomatoes. Leon did not lose his roots overnight. No one does. It happened the way erosion happens, one meeting at a time, one promotion at a time, one neighborhood demolished and rebuilt at a time. Until one day he looked in the mirror in his 38th floor penthouse and realized he had not been back to Roxbury in 11 years. Had not spoken to Miss Yvonne or the Walters family, or anyone from Dudley Street since his mother's funeral. He had built towers that reached the sky, but the foundation underneath him was hollow. No roots, no soil, just concrete and ambition and the echo of a dead mentor's voice, telling him that none of it mattered unless it was big enough to measure. That April morning, when the GPS told him to turn right into Dorchester, Leon signaled and followed the blue line on the screen. He did not know that the route would take him past a vacant lot between two crumbling apartment buildings. He did not know that the lot had been turned into something alive, and he certainly did not know that a wrong turn into a dirt parking area was about to crack open 20 years of carefully constructed emptiness. The GPS recalculated. Leon missed the turn for the city council building by 2 blocks. The screen flashed rerouting and directed him down a narrow side street lined with chain-link fences and overgrown sidewalks. He turned again, then again. Each turn pulled him deeper into a part of Dorchester that his development maps showed as gray squares labeled for demolition. Then the road ended. Not dramatically. Not with a barricade or a dead-end sign. It just narrowed into a dirt clearing between 2 old brick apartment buildings, 3 stories each, windows patched with plastic sheeting and duct tape. A hand-painted wooden sign leaned against a fence made of recycled pallets. The letters were uneven brushed, in forest green paint. Dorchester Roots Community Garden. All are welcome. Leon pulled the Bentley to a stop. $250,000 of British engineering sitting on packed dirt next to a fence built from shipping pallets. His tires pressed into soil that had never felt anything heavier than a wheelbarrow. He checked his phone. 7 minutes late for the council meeting. Corinne had texted twice. He looked up from the screen and out through the windshield. The lot was maybe half an acre. Modest. But what filled it was anything but ordinary. Raised garden beds lined up in neat rows, some built from old wooden crates, others from cinder blocks, stacked too high and filled with dark soil. Tomato cages stood in clusters. Bean poles leaned together like tiny teepees. A row of leafy greens stretched along the far edge, bright against the dull brick walls behind them. A rain barrel sat in one corner, rigged with a garden hose that snaked between the beds. A rusty spigot dripped steadily near the entrance, and the sound of water hitting soil was the only noise besides birds. The air smelled different here. Not the recycled filtered air of his car, not the cologne and coffee atmosphere of his penthouse. This smelled like earth, wet and alive and ancient in a way that made something in his chest tighten without permission. Leon opened the car door. He told himself he was just getting his bearings, just checking the GPS, just stretching his legs before rerouting to the council building. His Oxford shoes' $1,200 calfskin leather hand-stitched soles touched dirt for the first time since he was a boy in Roxbury. The soil gave slightly under his weight. Soft, yielding, nothing like the marble and hardwood his feet had grown accustomed to. He took 3 steps forward, then he saw her. At the far end of the garden, a woman knelt in the dirt between 2 raised beds. Her back was turned to him, her shoulders curved forward, arms buried elbow-deep in soil. She wore a faded gray sweatshirt with the sleeves pushed up and a cloth head wrap that had once been bright yellow but had softened to the color of old parchment. Her movements were steady, practiced. Dig, place, cover, pat, dig, place, cover, pat. A rhythm that spoke of repetition so deep it had become meditation. She did not look up when the Bentley pulled in, did not flinch at the sound of a car door closing, did not turn when expensive shoes crunched across her garden's dirt entrance. Whatever she was doing mattered more than whoever had just arrived. Leon stood still. Something was pulling at the back of his mind. Not a thought, not a memory, something older than both. The image of a woman kneeling in dirt hands, buried in soil, shoulders bent with purpose rather than defeat. He had seen this before. Not here, not this woman, but somewhere, sometime. In a backyard on Dudley Street in August with tomato vines climbing up wooden stakes and a mother who gave everything away in paper bags. His chest tightened. His feet moved before his brain gave permission. One step, then another. His $1,200 shoes sinking into soft earth with each stride. Soil climbing over the polished edges, staining the leather. He did not notice. He should have gotten back in the car. He should have rerouted the GPS and driven to the council meeting, where 14 blocks of this very neighborhood were about to be redesigned on a whiteboard. He should have been Leon Bradley's CEO, not Leon Bradley, a man standing in a garden he had no business being in, watching a stranger plant seeds in dirt his company planned to pave over. But Leon did not turn around. He kept walking, toward the woman, toward the dirt, toward something he could not yet name but could already feel pulling him forward like gravity. The woman finally looked up when his shadow fell across her row. She studied him for exactly 2 seconds. Eyes sharp, dark brown, intelligent. Then her gaze moved past him to the Bentley, sitting at the garden entrance like a spaceship that had landed on a farm. She looked back at him. No awe, no intimidation, no performance. Parking is at the end of the block. Not here. She nodded toward his car. Your front tire is on my carrot bed. Leon blinked. In his world, people stumbled over themselves to greet him. Assistants anticipated his needs. Investors laughed at jokes he had not finished telling. Board members adjusted their posture when he entered a room. This woman, kneeling in dirt, with soil caked under her fingernails, did not adjust anything. She simply stated a fact and turned back to her work. Dig, place, cover, pat. I am sorry, Leon said, and the words felt strange in his mouth. He could not remember the last time he had apologized to anyone for anything. I was looking for the city council building. The GPS sent me the wrong way. 3 blocks east. Take a left on Hancock. The woman did not look up. Leon should have thanked her and left. He had a meeting. He had investors. He had 14 blocks of Dorchester waiting to be discussed, debated, and ultimately demolished. But his feet stayed planted in the dirt and his eyes stayed fixed on the woman's hands. Steady, practiced. Soil darkened, but with nails trimmed clean. Gardening gloves on both hands, old canvas torn at the index and middle fingers of the right hand. She kept working in them anyway. What is this place? He asked. The woman paused, looked up again, measured him with those sharp eyes as if deciding whether the question deserved an answer or whether he was just another suit passing through a neighborhood he would never understand. Community garden, she said. We grow food for families who cannot afford fresh produce. The nearest grocery store with actual vegetables is 2.3 miles from here. No direct bus. Cab ride costs $18 round trip. A bunch of kale at the corner store goes for $7 and wilts before you get it home. She said it plainly. No bitterness, no plea. Just facts delivered with the efficiency of someone who had explained this 1,000 times and had stopped expecting the explanation to change anything. So we grow it ourselves, she said. Right here, in the dirt. Leon looked at the garden, really looked. The rows were not random. They were organized, labeled. Small wooden stakes at the head of each bed with names written in black marker. Henderson family. Mrs. Perline. Okafor family. More names. 6 beds. 6 families. How many families do you feed? Leon asked. 6, the woman said. 14 people total. 3 of them are children under 5. She pulled a seedling from a small container beside her and nestled it into the hole she had dug. Her hands moved with care, the same care a surgeon might use or a mother tucking a child into bed. I am Vanessa, she said without looking up. Vanessa Price. This is Dorchester Roots. Leon looked at her. At the torn gloves she refused to replace. At the organized rows and hand-lettered signs and rain barrel rigged with a garden hose. At the half-acre of dirt wedged between 2 crumbling buildings that somehow felt more alive than any building he had ever constructed, he extended his hand out of habit. Leon, he said. Leon Bradley. Vanessa glanced at his hand, then at the dirt covering hers. She almost smiled, not quite, but close. The corner of her mouth twitched, and something in her eyes shifted, not warmth, but recognition. The kind of look someone gives when they have already decided what category a person belongs in and are simply confirming it. Nice to meet you, Leon, she said. Now please move your car off my carrots. Leon did not leave right away. He should have. The council meeting was already 14 minutes late. Corinne had called twice. But something about the way Vanessa said we grow food for families kept pulling at him the way someone might tug a loose thread on a sweater without realizing they were unraveling the whole thing. Show me, he said. Vanessa looked at him like he had asked to borrow her car. "Excuse me, the garden. Show me how it works." She studied him for a long moment. Then she stood, brushed the dirt from her knees, and said, "Fine, but keep your shoes off the beds. I just planted those rows." She walked ahead without waiting. Leon followed his ruined Oxfords, pressing into soft soil with every step. The garden was smaller than any project he had ever funded, 1/2 acre at most. But up close it was more organized than some offices he had visited. Each raised bed had a small wooden stake at the head, hand-lettered in black marker. Vanessa stopped at the first one. "Henderson family," she said. 4 people, 2 kids under 5. Tamika Henderson works nights at a nursing home. Her husband drives a delivery truck. They make too much for food stamps and too little for groceries that actually have nutrition in them. This bed gives them collard greens, sweet potatoes, and green beans every 2 weeks. Their youngest, Devante, is allergic to soy, so I make sure nothing in their share has cross-contact with the beds where I grow edamame. She moved to the next bed. Mrs. Pearline Greer, 71 years old, lives alone. Type 2 diabetes. Her doctor told her to eat more leafy greens and cut processed food. But the nearest grocery store, with real produce, is 2.3 miles away. No direct bus line. A cab costs $18 round trip, so she was eating canned vegetables and white bread because that is what the corner store carries. I grow kale, spinach, and mustard greens for her every week. Her blood sugar has been more stable since March. Leon said nothing. He just followed. Third bed. Okafor family. Nigerian immigrants. 5 people. 3 kids in elementary school. The father, Chidi, works 2 jobs. The mother, Ngozi, stays home with the youngest who has asthma. They eat a lot of traditional dishes. Ogbono soup. Jollof rice. I grow bitter leaf and Scotch bonnets for them because they cannot find those fresh anywhere in this neighborhood for less than $9 a bunch. Fourth bed. Mr. Darnell Washington, 58, Army veteran, 2 tours overseas, lives in the building on the left, has PTSD, and does not leave his apartment most days. But he comes here 3 mornings a week to help water. Does not talk much, does not need to. I grow whatever he asks for, and right now he is growing cherry tomatoes because he says they remind him of his grandmother's garden in Alabama. Fifth bed. The Rivera family. A grandmother raising 2 teenage granddaughters after their mother went to prison. Money is tight, always tight. I grow peppers, cilantro, and squash for them. The older girl, Marisol, sometimes comes to help after school. She is thinking about studying agriculture. First person in that family to talk about college. Sixth bed. Vanessa paused. Her voice shifted, quieter, more careful. "This one is mine and Kira's," she said. "My daughter. She is 8. This bed is where I grow whatever we need for the week. Sometimes it is enough. Sometimes it is not. But Kira helps me plant every Saturday morning, and she knows the name of every seed in every row. She can tell you the difference between a determinate and indeterminate tomato plant, and she is 8 years old." Vanessa turned to face Leon. The morning sun caught the edges of her head wrap and lit the tiredness around her eyes into something that looked almost golden. 6 families, she said. 14 people. I know every name. I know every allergy. I know who needs iron and who needs fiber and whose kid will not eat beets no matter how I cook them. I know because I ask, because I show up, every single morning. Leon stood at the edge of the 6th bed. His hands hung at his sides. In his world, he managed portfolios that affected thousands of lives. Apartment buildings, shopping centers, office complexes housing hundreds of employees. He could not name a single tenant. Could not name a single janitor who cleaned his own office building. He signed contracts that displaced entire neighborhoods and had never once asked where those people went afterward. This woman, standing in a 1/2 acre of dirt between 2 crumbling buildings, knew that Devante Henderson was allergic to soy. Something shifted in Leon's chest. Not a crack. Not yet. More like the first hairline fracture in a wall that had been load-bearing for too long. The kind of fracture that does not make a sound but changes everything about what the structure can hold. He looked at the 6 beds. 6 families. 14 people. 1 woman with torn gloves doing what his $4.7 billion company had never once attempted. Feeding her neighbors. By hand. In the dirt. Leon walked back to the Bentley without a word. He sat down, closed the door. The leather seat molded around him like a second skin. The climate control hummed. The world outside the tinted glass became a screen again. Filtered, distant, safe. He should have started the engine. He should have driven to the council meeting, apologized for being late, and presented the Dorchester redevelopment plan the way he had rehearsed it 14 times. Phase 1, 14 blocks. Demolition, rezoning, construction, revenue projections, impact measured in scale. Reginald's voice filled the car like a passenger who had never left. Impact is measured in scale, Leon. One person helping one person is a beautiful story. But it is not a strategy. It is a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Leon gripped the steering wheel. Reginald was right. He had always been right. This garden was unsustainable. 1 woman, 6 families, no funding, no infrastructure, no growth plan. What happens when Vanessa gets sick? What happens when winter comes and the soil freezes? What happens when the city finally approves the demolition permits for this block? The garden would die. The families would go back to canned vegetables and $7 kale from the corner store, and nothing would have changed. This was exactly why individual charity did not work. This was why systems mattered. This was why Leon built buildings instead of gardens. Because buildings lasted, because buildings scaled, because buildings did not depend on one woman with torn gloves and a stubbornness that bordered on irrational. But then another voice, softer, older. A voice that smelled like August tomatoes and warm soil, and his mother's hands stained red from slicing. Tomatoes came in good this year. Want some? Leon closed his eyes. His mother never called it charity either. She never measured impact. She never calculated scale. She just grew things and gave them away because the people next door were hungry and she had enough. Celia Bradley had fed 3 families from a backyard the size of a parking space. Vanessa Price was feeding 6 from a lot between 2 buildings. Neither of them had a business plan. Neither of them had a board of directors. Neither of them had $4.7 billion, and both of them had done something Leon never had. They had looked their neighbors in the face and said, "I see you. What do you need?" His phone rang. Corinne. "Mr. Bradley, the council is asking when you will arrive. The zoning committee chair is losing patience. The investors want confirmation that phase 1 is moving forward." "Where are you?" Leon stared through the windshield at the garden. At the 6 beds. At Vanessa, already back on her knees, hands in the dirt, planting something she might never get to harvest if his company had its way. "Push the meeting," Leon said. Corinne went silent for 3 full seconds. "That never happened." "Push it to when, Mr. Bradley?" "I do not know yet." "Tomorrow, next week." "I need to check something first." "Check what?" "The investors are expecting a timeline. The legal team has already filed the preliminary." "Push it, Corinne." He hung up, opened his browser, typed Dorchester Roots Community Garden into the search bar. Nothing. No website. No social media page. No news article. No nonprofit registration. No GoFundMe. No trace of the place anywhere on the entire internet. Half an acre feeding 14 people, and the world had no idea it existed. No press release, no annual report, no branding strategy, no marketing budget. Just a woman in torn gloves doing work that mattered, completely invisible to every system Leon had ever built or believed in. He sat in the car for 11 more minutes. Engine off, air conditioning off. Windows down for the first time in years. The smell of soil drifted in through the open window. Wet, alive, real. Reginald's voice whispered, "She cannot scale this. It will collapse." His mother's voice whispered back, "Tomatoes came in good this year." Leon started the engine. He pulled out of the garden lot, slowly, careful this time not to drive over the carrot bed. He turned left on Hancock, drove past the city council building without stopping. He went home. He did not sleep. The next morning, Leon arrived at the garden at 6:15. The sun was barely up. The air was cold and damp, the kind of April chill that seeps through fabric and settles in your bones. He wore a suit. Different suit, same price tag. He carried a leather portfolio under his arm. Vanessa was already there. Of course she was. Kneeling at the far end of the garden, her back to the entrance, hands buried in soil. Her head wrap was damp from morning dew. Her breath made small clouds in the cold air. She had been here since 5:30. She did not look up when the Bentley pulled in, did not acknowledge the sound of the door opening or the crunch of expensive shoes on dirt. She just kept working. Dig, place, cover, pat. Leon walked to where she knelt. His shadow fell across her row. "You are back," Vanessa said without turning around. "Did the GPS get confused again?" "No," Leon said. "I came on purpose." Vanessa paused, sat back on her heels, wiped her hands on her jeans, and looked up at him. Those sharp brown eyes scanning his face, his suit, the leather portfolio measuring every detail. "What is in the folder?" Leon opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He had typed it himself at 3 in the morning on his home computer. "A proposal," he said. $500,000. Seed funding to expand Dorchester roots. New raised beds. A greenhouse for year-round growing. Irrigation system. Tools. Soil amendments. Enough to triple your capacity and hire 2 part-time assistants so you are not doing this alone. He held the paper out to her. Vanessa did not take it. $500,000, she repeated, her voice flat, unreadable. "No strings," Leon said. "No conditions, no naming rights, no press event, just capital for the work you are already doing." Vanessa looked at the paper, then at him, then at the Bentley behind him, then back at the paper. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her trowel. Her knuckles pressed pale against her brown skin. Something moved behind her eyes. Not gratitude, not excitement. Something harder, something with edges. She stood up slowly. Dirt fell from her knees, like dust from old books. "Why?" One word. But it carried the weight of years. "Because what you built here matters," Leon said. "Because 6 families are eating because of you. And that is." Vanessa raised one hand. The torn glove caught the early light. "Stop," she said. "Just stop." Leon stopped. "You know how many people have come to this garden with promises." Vanessa's voice was steady, but there was heat underneath it. The kind that comes from a wound that never fully closed. Nonprofits with glossy brochures and matching t-shirts. They planted 3 beds, took photos, posted them online, and never came back. A city councilman showed up before an election, shook my hand, said funding was coming. "I am still waiting." That was 2 years ago. A YouTube crew wanted to film a feel-good segment. They asked me to cry on camera. I told them to leave. She took a step closer to Leon, close enough that he could see the soil embedded in the creases of her palms. "They all come, Mr. Bradley. They all promise. They all leave. And when they leave, the tomatoes still need water and missus. Pearline still needs her greens, and Kira still asks me why the nice people stopped coming. So I stopped expecting anyone to stay." Leon stood very still. In boardrooms, he always had an answer, always had a counter, always had a slide deck or a projection or a number that made the objection dissolve. But standing in this garden with this woman looking at him like he was every broken promise she had ever received wrapped in a suit and a Bentley, he had nothing. Reginald's voice flickered in his mind. "See, they do not want help. They do not understand how to receive it. This is why individual charity fails. No infrastructure, no accountability, no." But for the first time, the voice sounded hollow, like an echo in an empty room, because Vanessa was not refusing help out of pride or ignorance. She was refusing it because every single system designed to help people like her had failed. Every institution, every program, every man in a suit with a number on a piece of paper. She was not ungrateful. She was experienced. Leon put the paper back in the portfolio, closed it, held it at his side. "What do you need?" he asked. "Not what I am offering. What do you actually need?" Vanessa stared at him, measuring, deciding. The garden was silent, except for a robin singing somewhere near the rain barrel and the steady drip of the rusty spigot. "I need someone to show up Saturday morning at 6, she said. "Not with a checkbook, with their hands. In the dirt. I need someone who will pull weeds and haul compost and get blisters on their palms and not complain about it. I need someone who understands that this garden is not a photo opportunity or a tax write-off. It is a lifeline, and lifelines do not need investors. They need people." She looked at his suit, his shoes, his manicured hands that had never held anything heavier than a pen or a phone. "So that is what I need, Mr. Bradley. Can your $500,000 do that?" Leon looked at the garden, at the 6 beds with their hand-lettered stakes, at the torn gloves on Vanessa's hands, at the soil under her nails, and the steel behind her eyes. Somewhere deep in his chest beneath the suits and the billions and the voice of a dead mentor who measured everything in scale, something very small and very old stirred, a memory of dirt under his own fingernails. A memory of August. A memory of paper bags full of tomatoes. "Saturday," he said. 6 o'clock. Vanessa did not smile, did not nod, did not thank him. She just looked at him for one long second, as if recalibrating everything she had assumed about the man in front of her. Then she turned back to the dirt, knelt down, picked up her trowel. "Do not be late," she said, "and do not wear that suit." Saturday morning, 5:58. Leon pulled into the dirt lot wearing jeans he had not worn in 3 years, and a plain gray t-shirt that still had the price tag attached when he found it in the back of his closet. He had torn the tag off in the car. $42 for a shirt to wear in dirt. Even his casual clothes cost more than some people's grocery bills. Vanessa was already working. Of course she was. Her head wrap was tied tight. Her torn gloves were on. She did not acknowledge him when he stepped out of the Bentley, but she was not alone. A woman sat in a folding lawn chair near the rain barrel. 71 years old, thin, careful posture, a wide-brimmed hat shading her face from the early sun. She was sorting seed packets with slow, deliberate hands. Arthritis had curled her fingers slightly, but she worked through it the way people work through pain when stopping is not an option. "That is Mrs. Pearline," Vanessa said without looking up. "She comes every Saturday. Do not rush her. She has her own pace." Near the Henderson beds, 2 small children chased each other between the rows. A boy maybe 4, a girl barely 3. Their mother had dropped them off at 6 and gone to her morning shift at the nursing home. The kids treated the garden like a playground. Barefoot, laughing, dirt between their toes. At the far end, a man in a faded army jacket knelt silently beside a row of cherry tomato cages. Darnell Washington. He did not speak when Leon walked past, did not look up, just worked, steady, focused. His hands moved through soil the way some people move through prayer. Vanessa handed Leon a pair of gloves without ceremony. Old canvas, torn at the index and middle fingers, the spare pair. She pointed to a section of bare earth near the Okafor beds. "Dig 12 inches down, turn the soil. Remove any rocks bigger than your fist. Do not step on the rows next to it." That was it. No orientation, no welcome speech, just work. Leon knelt down, his jeans pressed into cold, damp earth. Within 5 minutes, his knees ached. Within 10, his lower back screamed from a position it had never been asked to hold. The shovel handle was rough wood, splintered in places, and within 20 minutes, a blister formed on his right palm between the thumb and index finger. Hot, tight, the skin stretched thin over fluid. He kept digging. Vanessa worked 3 rows away. Steady, effortless. The same movements she made every single day. Movements that had worn grooves into her muscle memory until gardening was as natural as breathing. Leon watched her between shovelfuls. She never paused, never stretched her back, never checked her phone. She just worked. The Henderson kids ran past him. The boy stopped, stared at the Bentley, then looked at Leon with wide eyes. "Is that your car?" "Yes," Leon said. The boy studied it for a moment, then shrugged. "It is too clean," he said, and ran off to chase his sister. Around 8 o'clock, a girl appeared at the garden entrance, 8 years old. Glasses with tape around the left hinge where the frame had cracked and been repaired rather than replaced. A backpack covered in pins and patches. She walked straight to Vanessa and hugged her from behind without a word. Kira, Vanessa's daughter. The girl dropped her backpack on the bench near Mrs. Pearline and went immediately to a small wooden table near the tool shed. On it sat rows of seed packets sorted by type and labeled with family names. Kira began organizing them with the precision of someone who had done this 100 times. Leon watched her work. She picked up a packet, read the label, and placed it in a small basket marked Henderson. Then another, Okafor, then Pearline. She knew every family, every name, every basket. She noticed Leon staring. "Do you know how to plant beans?" she asked. Leon shook his head. Kira walked over, knelt down beside him like it was the most natural thing in the world and showed him. "You make a hole with your finger, 1 inch deep. Drop the seed in. Cover it up. Pat it down. Not too hard. The seed needs room to breathe," she demonstrated, small fingers pressing into soil with practiced care. Then she looked up at him through her taped glasses and smiled. "Now you try." Leon pressed his finger into the dirt. 1 inch. Dropped the seed. Covered it. Patted. "Good," Kira said. "But gentler. Like you are tucking it in for a nap." He tried again. Softer this time. "Better," she nodded approvingly. "This row is for Mrs. Pearline. She likes green beans the most. She says they remind her of her mama's cooking." Kira moved to the next hole. She hummed while she worked. A quiet melody. No words. Just a soft tune that drifted through the morning air between the sound of shovels and birdsong and the Henderson kids laughing. And something in Leon's chest came apart. Not slowly. Not like a crack spreading over weeks. It happened all at once like a dam that holds and holds and holds until one small note of music finds the fracture. He stopped digging. His hands went still in the dirt. The humming continued. And suddenly, he was not in Dorchester anymore. He was in Roxbury. He was 9 years old, standing in a backyard the size of a parking space. His mother was kneeling in front of tomato vines humming the same kind of tuneless melody, and she turned to him with red-stained hands and said, "Baby, take this bowl over to Miss Denise next door. Tell her the tomatoes came in good." The memory hit him like a fist to the sternum. Not vague, not distant, specific. The smell of warm tomatoes. The weight of the wooden bowl. The screen door at Miss Denise's house that always squeaked when it opened. His mother's voice. Her hands, her humming. 22 years since she died. 22 years since he had let himself remember her in full color instead of the faded, managed version he kept locked away where it could not slow him down. Leon stood completely still. His eyes burned. His throat sealed shut. Dirt covered his hands and his jeans and his $42 t-shirt, and he did not care about any of it. Vanessa saw him from across the garden. She paused, watched. Read the stillness in his body, the way only someone who has carried heavy memories can read another person's weight. She did not ask what was wrong, did not call out or come running. She just walked to the cooler near the bench, pulled out a bottle of water, and brought it to him. Set it on the ground beside his knee. "Drink," she said quietly. "Then keep going. The soil does not care what you are feeling. It just needs you to show up." Leon picked up the water, drank, set it back down, picked up the shovel, and kept going. 3 Saturdays passed, then 4, then 5. Leon came every week. 6 o'clock. Jeans. Old t-shirt. The blisters on his hands hardened into calluses. His back stopped protesting. He learned which rows needed more water, which soil was too acidic, how to tell when kale was ready to harvest by the way the leaves curled at the edges. He learned the names, not just the families, the individual names. Tamika Henderson and her husband Roderick, their kids Devontae and Aaliyah. Mr. Darnell, who still did not talk much, but nodded at Leon now when he arrived, which Vanessa said was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Mrs. Pearline, who called Leon baby regardless of his net worth, and corrected his planting technique with the authority of a woman who had been gardening since before he was born. He learned Kira's favorite subject was science, that she wanted to study plants when she grew up, that her glasses were held together by tape and hope, and the fact that a new pair cost $120 her mother could not spare. But Leon did not know everything. Not yet. On his 5th Saturday, Vanessa left early. A rare absence. She had a shift at the farmer's market and asked Leon to lock up the garden shed when he finished. He agreed. While cleaning tools, he noticed a composition notebook on the folding chair near the rain barrel. Spiral-bound, worn. The cover was soft from handling the corners bent and frayed. A rubber band held it shut. It must have slipped from Vanessa's bag when she left. Leon picked it up to put it somewhere safe. The rubber band slipped. The notebook fell open. He did not mean to read it, but the first page was right there, handwritten in careful black ink, and what he saw stopped him cold. Henderson family. 4 members. Delivery schedule Tuesday and Friday. Tamika prefers collard greens and sweet potatoes. Roderick asked for more green beans this month. Devontae soy allergy confirmed. Aaliyah will eat anything except beets. Birthday, June 14th. Grow cherry tomatoes, she loves them. Note, Tamika's hours change deliver before 4 on Tuesdays now. Leon turned the page. Mrs. Pearline Greer, 71, type 2 diabetes. HbA1c was 9.1 in January, down to 8.4 by March after switching from canned to fresh greens. Doctor says keep going. Needs kale, spinach, mustard greens, weekly. Hates arugula. Likes when I bring extra for her neighbor Miss Dorothy, who does not ask for help but needs it. Birthday October 3rd. Her favorite flower is marigold. Plant some near her bed next spring. Next page. Okafor family. Chidi and Ngozi, 3 children. Grow bitter leaf Scotch bonnet peppers garden egg. Ngozi says the youngest Emeka has been eating better since the fresh produce started. His asthma has been fewer flare-ups. Need to find ugu seeds. Check Nigerian grocery on Blue Hill Ave. Page after page. Every family. Every detail. Allergies. Birthdays. Favorite vegetables. Health conditions. Delivery days. Personal notes written with the intimacy of someone who did not just feed these people, but knew them the way a mother knows her own household. Darnell Washington, 58, veteran. Does not talk about what happened overseas but comes 3 mornings a week. Grows cherry tomatoes. Says they remind him of his grandmother in Alabama. Let him work at his own pace. Never ask about the scars on his hands. He will talk when he is ready. He is getting better. He smiled last Thursday. First time in weeks. Rivera family. Abuela Carmen raising Marisol and Lucia. Marisol, interested in agriculture, wants to study at UMass. Help her with the application when the time comes. Lucia is quieter, reads during garden hours. Bring her books when I find them at the thrift store. Peppers, cilantro, squash, calabaza, if I can find the seeds. Then the last section. A page headed in different ink. Red pen, smaller handwriting. As if she had written it late at night when the neatness of daytime was too heavy to maintain. Monthly expenses. Garden. Seeds and seedlings. $89. Soil amendments, $63. Water bill shared with building super cash payment, $45. Tools replacement, new trowel hose repair, $31. Delivery, gas and bus fare, $28. Food bank coordination, phone costs $12. Emergency produce purchase when harvest fell short. Stop and shop, $97. School supplies for nutrition, class printed handouts, crayons for kids, $22. Compost materials, $14. Mrs. Pearline's glucometer test strips, she ran out, $46. Miscellaneous, $17. Farmers market booth fee, monthly $38. Total, $847. Below that in the same red ink, personal expenses. Me and Kira. Rent. Kira's share of room at sister's place, $150. Food for us, $82. Kira's school supplies, $23. Bus passes, $34. Laundry, $8. Phone prepaid, $15. Total $312. Leon stared at the numbers. Read them again. Then a third time. $847 a month for the garden. $312 for herself and her daughter. She spent nearly 3 times more on strangers than on her own child. Not because she did not love Kira, because she loved Kira so much that she wanted Kira to grow up in a world where neighbors fed each other, where a community existed, where people were not invisible. Leon closed the notebook, set it gently on the chair, sat down on the old plastic bench beside the rain barrel. The garden was empty now. Everyone had gone home. The rows stood neat and green in the afternoon light. Water dripped from the rusty spigot. A robin landed on the fence and watched him with one black eye. He looked at the 6 beds, the hand-lettered stakes, the torn gloves draped over the edge of the tool shed, the half-acre of dirt that one woman held together with bare hands, and a budget smaller than what he spent on lunch meetings in a single week. The entire architecture of his success suddenly looked like scaffolding around an empty building. The penthouse, the Bentley, the $4.7 billion portfolio, all scaffolding, impressive from the outside, hollow underneath. No foundation, no roots, just steel and ambition propping up nothing. Vanessa Price had built something real, something that breathed and grew and fed people and held a community together with handwritten notes and marigold seeds and test strips for a 71-year-old woman's blood sugar. And she had done it for $847 a month. Leon sat on that bench until the sun started to dip behind the apartment buildings. He did not move. He did not check his phone. He just sat with the weight of everything he had seen and everything he had failed to see for 41 years pressing down on his shoulders like soil on a seed. If this story is making you feel something, subscribe for more stories like this. Now let us continue. That evening, Leon sat in the Bentley outside the garden with his laptop open on the passenger seat. The screen glowed blue in the dark car. He had pulled up the Dorchester Redevelopment Project Master Plan, the document he had helped draft. The document that would go before the city council for final approval in 6 weeks. He zoomed into the map. Phase 1, 14 blocks outlined in red. Demolition planned, rezoning approved in principle. Commercial mixed-use development. Estimated revenue $230 million over 10 years. His signature was already on the preliminary filings. He scrolled east along the map, past Block 7, past Block 8, into Block 9. And there it was. Lot 9B, a small rectangle of land between 2 residential buildings, marked in gray, designated for demolition, categorized as vacant lot unused. But it was not vacant. It was not unused. It was Dorchester Roots Community Garden. Leon's stomach dropped like an elevator with its cables cut. He zoomed in further. The property lines were clear. Lot 9B sat squarely inside the Phase 1 demolition boundary. If the project moved forward as planned, the garden would be bulldozed within 8 months. The raised beds, the rain barrel, the pallet fence with the hand-painted sign, Mrs. Pearline's kale, Darnell's cherry tomatoes, Kira's bean rows, all of it, gone, replaced by a parking structure for a retail complex that would sell organic smoothies for $14 to people who had never once grown their own food. Reginald's voice echoed in the dark car. Impact is measured in scale, Leon. But for the first time, the words did not sound like wisdom. They sounded like a demolition order dressed in philosophy. They sounded like the exact logic that would justify paving over a garden that fed 14 people so that a corporation could sell overpriced beverages to thousands. Leon closed the laptop, sat in the dark. The garden was invisible beyond the windshield, but he could still smell the soil through the cracked window, still feel the calluses on his palms. Still hear Kira's voice, teaching him to plant beans with gentle fingers. His company was going to destroy the only thing in Dorchester that actually worked, the only thing that actually fed people, connected people, healed people, and he had signed the paperwork that made it possible. The question was no longer whether the garden mattered. The question was whether Leon was going to be the man who bulldozed it. He did not sleep that night either. The next morning, Leon drove to the garden before sunrise. Vanessa was already there. She was always already there. Kneeling at the far end, her back to the entrance. Dig, place, cover, pat. He walked to her row, stood beside her. She did not look up. "I need to tell you something," he said. Vanessa's hands paused in the dirt. She sat back on her heels and looked at him, those sharp brown eyes reading his face the way she read soil searching for what was underneath the surface. "Your company is developing Dorchester," she said. Not a question. A statement. Leon blinked. "How did you know?" "The notices went up on the utility poles last month. Demolition planned for lots 7 through 14. Public comment period ending in May." Vanessa pulled a weed from the edge of the bed and tossed it into a bucket. "I read them all. I know exactly what is coming." Leon felt something collapse in his chest. Not surprise. Something worse. Shame. She had known this entire time. She had known while she handed him gloves, while she let him plant beans beside her daughter, while she showed him the garden bed by bed and family by family. She had known, and she had kept going. "Why are you still planting?" Leon asked, his voice raw. If you know this is all going to be torn down, why are you still here? Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. The morning light caught the lines around her eyes. The tiredness, the steadiness, the refusal to break. Because Mrs. Pearline still needs to eat this week, she said. Because the Henderson kids still need vegetables this month. Because Darnell still needs somewhere to put his hands in the dirt so they stop shaking. I do not plant for next year, Mr. Bradley. I plant for today. The future is a luxury people like us cannot afford to plan for. She turned back to the soil. Leon stood there. The sentence hit him the way her first words had the day she told him to move his car off her carrots. Plainly. Without performance. Just truth delivered with the efficiency of someone who had no energy to waste on making it softer. He had spent his entire career building for the future. 10-year plans, 20-year projections, revenue forecasts that stretched decades. He lived in the future, breathed in the future, made every decision with the future as his compass. Vanessa lived in Tuesday's harvest, in this week's delivery. In today's planting, both of them were right. But only one of them had ever had the privilege of choosing which timeline to live in. Leon knelt down beside her. His jeans pressed into the dirt. His calloused hands found the soil. I do not want this garden to disappear, he said. Vanessa did not look at him. Then do not let it, she said. But do not make promises in dirt that you plan to pave over. The words landed heavy. Because she was right. He had signed the papers. He had approved the plans. He had sat in meetings where this very lot was described as underutilized land with potential for commercial repurposing, and he had nodded along without once asking who was already using it. Vanessa Leon said, I am not going to let them take this garden. She stopped working, looked at him, really looked. Not the measuring glance she gave strangers. Something deeper, searching for the thing she had been burned by before, the promise that evaporates, the suit that leaves. Why should I believe that? She asked. Because I have been coming here every Saturday for 5 weeks, Leon said. Because I have blisters that turned into calluses. Because I know that Devante is allergic to soy and Mrs. Pearline's favorite flower is marigold. And Darnell smiled last Thursday for. That night, Leon did something he had not done since business school. He researched something that had nothing to do with money. He sat at his walnut desk on the 38th floor, with his laptop open and a glass of water he forgot to drink. He typed Food Desert United States into the search bar and started reading. 23.5 million Americans lived in food deserts. He read the number twice, then a third time. 23.5 million people who did not have a grocery store with fresh produce within a mile of their home in urban areas or within 10 miles in rural areas. Not because they were lazy, not because they did not care about nutrition, because the infrastructure did not exist. Because grocery chains looked at low-income zip codes and calculated that the profit margin was not worth the investment. Because the system Leon built his career inside had decided that some neighborhoods were worth feeding and others were not. He scrolled further. Dorchester had one of the highest rates of type 2 diabetes and obesity in the entire city of Boston. The data pointed to the same cause over and over. Limited access to fresh food, families eating from corner stores and fast food chains, because those were the only options within walking distance. $7 for a wilting bunch of kale at a convenience store, or $1.29 for a bag of chips. The math was brutal and simple. Leon clicked on a study from the University of Pennsylvania. Community gardens in low-income neighborhoods had been shown to reduce stress and anxiety among participants. They lowered rates of diet-related illness. They increased social cohesion, meaning people actually talked to their neighbors, trusted their neighbors, helped their neighbors. One study estimated that every dollar invested in a community garden returned $6 in community health value. 6 to 1. Leon leaned back in his chair. He had spent $2.3 million on the marble lobby of his new corporate headquarters. Italian stone, custom lighting, a water feature that made a sound like a mountain stream. He had approved that budget without a second thought. It returned nothing. No health outcomes. No community trust. No reduction in hospital visits. Just an impressive entrance designed to make investors feel confident. Vanessa spent $847 a month and generated more measurable impact than his entire corporate social responsibility department, which had a budget of $1.2 million annually and produced glossy reports that no one read. He kept scrolling, article after article, study after study. And one pattern emerged that made his chest tight. Community gardens were disappearing. Not because they failed, because the land underneath them became valuable. Developers bought the lots, rezoned them, built condominiums and retail spaces and parking garages. The gardens that worked, the ones that actually fed people and healed neighborhoods, were being bulldozed to make room for buildings that served people who could already afford groceries. Leon stared at his screen. He was one of those developers. He had built his entire career on exactly that model: buy undervalued land, rezone, develop, profit. He had never once asked what was on the land before his architects drew over it. He had never once checked if a half-acre of dirt between two old buildings was feeding 14 people. Reginald's voice drifted through his mind like smoke from a fire that had finally gone cold. Band-Aid on a bullet wound, Leon. But this time Leon did not nod along. This time something inside him pushed back. No, Vanessa was not a Band-Aid. She was a field surgeon. She was operating in the middle of a crisis with no hospital, no funding, no backup, and no one coming to help. She did not wait for the system to show up. She did not write proposals or apply for grants or host galas with open bars and silent auctions. She got on her knees in the dirt and grew food for people who were hungry. Right now, today. While the system was still in meetings, debating whether the problem existed, Leon closed the laptop. The penthouse was silent. The Charles River glittered beyond the windows, and for the first time, the view looked like what it was: a picture, beautiful and completely useless to anyone standing on the other side of the glass. He picked up his phone. 6:47 in the morning. He called Corinne. She answered on the second ring, because Corinne always answered on the second ring. "Mr. Bradley, good morning. The council meeting is rescheduled for Thursday. I have confirmed with the zoning committee, and the legal team is preparing the pull lot 9B out of the Dorchester plan," Leon said. Silence. 3 full seconds. "I am sorry, Mr. Bradley. Did you say pull lot 9B? Yes. Remove it from the Phase 1 demolition scope. Rezone it as protected community use. Mr. Bradley, lot 9B is in the center of the project footprint. Removing it would require restructuring the entire southern access corridor. The investors have already approved the—" "I know what they approved," Leon said. "Pull it out. The investors are going to want an explanation. Tell them I will explain at the board meeting Thursday." He hung up, sat in the quiet of his penthouse. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from something closer to adrenaline. The kind that comes not from closing a deal, but from knowing with absolute certainty that a decision is right, even though it will cost everything comfortable. Thursday morning. The Bradley Ventures boardroom. 12th floor of the corporate headquarters with the $2.3 million marble lobby. 12 board members around a polished mahogany table. Leon stood at the head. He told them. All of it. The garden, the families, the lots. The plan to remove 9B from the demolition scope and protect it as designated community land. He told them he wanted to acquire the 2 adjacent lots as well, lots 9A and 9C, and donate them to the garden for expansion. The room went quiet, the way a room goes quiet before a storm. A board member named Pritchard spoke first. His voice was careful and cold. "You are proposing to sacrifice roughly $4.8 million in projected revenue from the southern corridor to preserve a community garden. I am proposing to invest in the only thing in that neighborhood that actually works," Leon said. "A garden," Pritchard repeated. "You want to carve out the center of a $230 million development project for a garden." "For a community," Leon corrected. "For 14 families who eat because one woman decided to grow food instead of waiting for someone like us to notice they were hungry, which we never did. I have been developing Dorchester on paper for 2 years, and I never once visited the actual neighborhood until my GPS broke. It should concern all of us." The vote went 7-5 against. Leon overrode it. Majority shareholder privilege. It was the first time in his career he had used it, and the look on Pritchard's face told him exactly how much it would cost in political capital. He did not care. That Saturday, Leon arrived at the garden at 5:30. Before Vanessa, before anyone, he stood in the lot and looked at the 2 empty parcels on either side, overgrown with weeds, littered with broken glass and old tires, but the soil underneath was the same dark, rich earth that grew kale and beans and cherry tomatoes 20 feet away. When Vanessa arrived at 6, she stopped at the garden entrance, looked at Leon, looked at the 2 adjacent lots, looked back at Leon. "What did you do?" she asked. "I removed the garden from the demolition plan," Leon said, "and I bought the 2 lots next to it. They are yours." Vanessa stared at him. Her hands were at her sides. The torn gloves hung from her back pocket. She did not move for a long time. "Mine," she said. "Yours. The gardens, the communities. Legally protected. No one can build on them. No one can rezone them. No one can bulldoze them. They are community land now permanently." Vanessa looked at the empty lots, then at her garden, then at the sky, which was just beginning to lighten from black to deep blue. "I run it," she said. "Not you. Not your company. Not a board. Me." "You," Leon agreed. "I choose the families. I decide what gets planted. I hire who I want. All of it. Your garden, your rules. I just removed the wall that was about to crush it." Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Small, definite. The way she did everything. Without excess. Without performance. "Okay," she said. "Then we have work to do." And she walked into the garden and knelt down in the dirt. The expansion took 3 weeks. Not because the work was complex, but because the community did it together. Leon did not hire a construction crew. He did not bring in contractors or project managers or architects. Instead, Vanessa put the word out and people showed up. Darnell Washington built the irrigation system by hand. 2 tours in the Army had taught him plumbing and engineering, and he ran PVC pipe across the 3 connected lots with the precision of someone who needed every task to have a purpose. He did not talk while he worked, but he showed up every morning at 5:45 and did not leave until the work was done. Mrs. Pearline sat in her folding chair near the rain barrel and supervised. She could not kneel or lift, but she could sort seeds and label beds and tell everyone exactly what they were doing wrong with the authority of 7 decades of life experience. Nobody argued with Mrs. Pearline. The Henderson kids helped carry soil in small buckets, treating it like a game. Tamika Henderson came on her days off and built raised beds from reclaimed pallet wood, hammering nails, with the focus of someone who understood that this garden was the reason her children ate vegetables. Marisol Rivera, the teenager who wanted to study agriculture, helped Vanessa design the planting schedule for the new beds. She brought a notebook full of research about companion planting and crop rotation that she had done on her school library computer. Vanessa read every page. Kira painted the new garden sign. Dorchester Roots Community Garden. The letters were bright green on white painted plywood. Not perfect, not professional, but steady. She added a small detail at the bottom. A drawing of a red pepper, her pepper, the first one she had ever grown. Leon carried lumber, hauled compost, dug post holes, got blisters on top of calluses. His back ached every night. He did not manage the project. He did not run meetings or approve budgets or send emails. He just showed up and did whatever Vanessa told him to do, which was usually the hardest physical task available, because she still did not fully trust that his commitment was real and wanted to see how far he would go before he quit. He never quit. On the last day of construction, Leon stood in the expanded garden. 3 lots, 42 raised beds, an irrigation system, a small greenhouse made from reclaimed windows and 2x4s, a tool shed that Darnell had built from scratch, a covered area with 2 picnic tables where Vanessa would hold her Wednesday nutrition classes, no longer under a tree, but under an actual roof. He looked around. 12 people stood in the garden, sweating, laughing, drinking water from a cooler Mrs. Pearline had insisted on bringing. He had managed construction teams of 200 people through email and conference calls. He had built towers that touched the sky. But standing in this garden with dirt under his nails and 12 neighbors who knew each other by name, he felt more useful than he had felt in 20 years. 6 months passed. Month 1, the first seedlings in the expanded beds broke through the soil. Small green shoots pushing up through dark earth like tiny fists reaching for the sun. Vanessa documented each one in her notebook. Month 2, the first full harvest from the new beds. Enough to add 3 families to the distribution list. 9 families now. 26 people eating fresh produce grown within walking distance of their front doors. Month 3, Vanessa completed her certification as a community nutrition educator. She had studied at night after Kira went to sleep using free online courses and library books. The certificate was not from a fancy university. It was from a community college extension program, but it meant she could now teach formal nutrition classes with recognized curriculum. She pinned it to the wall of the tool shed next to Kira's drawing of the red pepper. Month 4, Kira presented her science fair project on composting to her 3rd grade class. She explained the nitrogen cycle using soil samples from the garden and a diagram she drew herself. Her teacher asked where she learned all of it. Kira said, "My mom taught me. In the dirt." She won 2nd place. She wore new glasses, no tape, no cracked hinges, a proper pair that fit her face paid for with the modest salary Vanessa now earned as director of Dorchester Roots, which had been registered as an official nonprofit with legal protection over its land. Month 5, Darnell Washington spoke at a garden gathering for the first time. He did not say much, just stood up near the cherry tomato beds and said, "This place saved my life. I do not know how else to put it." Then he sat down. Mrs. Pearline handed him a glass of lemonade and said, "We know, baby. We know." Month 6, Mrs. Pearline brought an envelope to the garden on a Tuesday morning. Inside was a printout from her doctor. Her HbA1c levels had dropped from 9.1 to 7.3. 6 months of fresh greens, cooked at home, grown 200 feet from her front door. Her doctor had called it remarkable. Mrs. Pearline called it what it was. She stood in the garden between the kale rows and the spinach beds, with the paper trembling in her arthritic fingers and tears running down her face, and said, "This garden gave me my health back. Vanessa gave me my health back." Vanessa was not there to hear it. She was at the other end of the expanded lot planting a new row of collard greens for family number 12. The distribution list had grown to 14 families, 37 people, 1 garden. One woman who still woke up at 5:30 every morning and still knelt in the dirt every day and still wore the same torn gloves she had worn the morning. Leon Bradley parked his Bentley on her carrot bed. Leon noticed the gloves one Saturday. He had bought new pairs for everyone during the expansion. Canvas, reinforced fingers, proper fit. Everyone wore them, except Vanessa. "You know we have new gloves," Leon said, nodding toward her torn pair. Vanessa looked down at her hands. The canvas was threadbare at the fingertips. The stitching had come loose at the wrist. They were barely functional. "These remind me where it started," she said. "Before the lots, before the greenhouse, before any of it. When it was just me and 6 beds, and no one coming to help. I keep them because the day I forget what that felt like is the day I stop being the person this garden needs me to be." Leon looked at the gloves. Then at the garden. Then at the woman who had built a community out of nothing but dirt and stubbornness and love. He did not say anything. Some things did not need words. They just needed someone to show up at 6 in the morning, put on a pair of old gloves, and get to work. One year, after Leon Bradley parked his Bentley on a carrot bed, he stood at a podium in front of 200 people. Investors, journalists, city officials, community organizers from 12 cities. The event was held not in a hotel ballroom or a corporate conference center, but in the courtyard of a community center 3 blocks from Dorchester Roots under a white tent with folding chairs on grass. He was announcing the Roots Initiative, a foundation dedicated to protecting and expanding community gardens in food deserts across the country. Funded initially with $18 million from Bradley Ventures, structured not as a charity, but as a permanent land trust. The model was simple. Find neighborhoods where people were already growing food, protect the land underneath them, provide infrastructure, then get out of the way and let the community lead. His marketing team had suggested calling it the Bradley Foundation. Leon said no. His PR director suggested the Bradley Community Fund. Leon said no again. He named it Roots, because that was what Vanessa had taught him. Communities did not need towers. They needed roots. Something underneath. Something that held. Leon spoke for 4 minutes. He kept it short. He talked about food deserts, about the 23.5 million Americans who lived in them, about the 6-to-1 return on community garden investment, about the fact that his own company had nearly bulldozed the most effective community health program in Dorchester to build a parking structure. Then, he stepped back from the microphone and said, "But I am not the person who should be telling this story." He turned to the side of the stage. Vanessa stood there. Simple blue dress, the one she had bought with her own paycheck from the nonprofit salary. Hair pulled back under a cloth wrap, hands clean but rough. She walked to the podium, the way she walked into the garden every morning. Steady, unhurried, without performance. She adjusted the microphone, looked out at the audience, 200 faces staring back at her. 3 years ago, she said, I started a garden on a vacant lot because 6 families in my neighborhood could not afford fresh vegetables. I did not have a business plan. I did not have a board of directors. I did not have a mission statement. I had seeds, dirt, and neighbors who were hungry. She paused. Her voice was clear. No tremor. No rehearsed emotion. People talk a lot about empowering communities, about lifting people up, about giving back. But the families I serve do not need to be lifted. They need to be trusted. They need someone to hand them a seed and say, grow this yourself. Feed yourself. Feed your neighbor. You do not need permission. You do not need a billionaire. You just need dirt and the decision to show up. The room was silent. 200 people who spent their careers in boardrooms and policy meetings listening to a woman who spent her mornings on her knees in soil. Vanessa looked down at the front row. Kira sat there, 9 years old now. New glasses, a backpack covered in pins, and in her lap a small plastic-sealed bell pepper. Red, slightly lopsided, preserved in clear resin like a specimen in a museum. The first pepper she had ever grown. The one she had given Leon on a Tuesday morning in the garden when it was still warm from the sun. Kira smiled at her mother. Vanessa smiled back. The kind of smile that carries years of weight and still holds. This garden exists, Vanessa said, because I refuse to wait for someone to save us. And it will keep existing because now other communities will not have to wait either. That is what roots means. Not a foundation, not a fund. Just the part of the plant that nobody sees that holds everything up. She stepped away from the podium. The applause was not the polished, obligatory kind Leon heard at corporate events. It was heavier, rougher, the kind that comes from people who just heard something true. Outside the tent, near a small fountain, Leon found Vanessa and Kira. Were you nervous? Leon asked. Vanessa looked at him with those sharp brown eyes. I have been kneeling in dirt for 3 years, growing food for strangers. Talking to 200 people in chairs is the easy part. Leon laughed. A real laugh. The kind his face had forgotten how to make before a wrong turn on a Tuesday morning brought him to a half-acre of dirt between 2 crumbling buildings. He looked at Vanessa, at Kira holding her preserved pepper like a trophy, at the garden 3 blocks away where Darnell was probably watering cherry tomatoes right now and Mrs. Pearline was probably telling someone they were planting too deep. And he thought about Reginald Odom, about the voice that had guided him for 20 years. Impact is measured in scale, Leon. One person helping one person is a band-aid on a bullet wound. For the first time, Leon answered back, not out loud, but somewhere deep in his chest, in the place where roots grow when you finally stop running from where you came from. You were wrong, Reginald. Vanessa was not a band-aid. She was not treating a wound. She was growing medicine. In the dirt, with her hands, while the rest of us were still sitting in meetings arguing about whether the patient was even sick. Leon had built towers that touched the sky. He had reshaped skylines and signed contracts worth more than some countries. He had spent 41 years measuring impact in square footage and revenue and scale. But the richest thing he had ever owned was not the penthouse on the 38th floor. It was not the Bentley or the portfolio or the marble lobby that cost $2.3 million. It was dirt under his fingernails, calluses on his palms, the sound of Kira's laughter between tomato rows, the smell of wet soil on a Saturday morning, the weight of a red bell pepper placed in his hand by a child who said, "I grew this for you." Wealth without roots is just scaffolding. Impressive from the outside, hollow underneath, ready to collapse the moment someone asks what it was built for. Leon Bradley had driven into Dorchester to demolish a neighborhood. He left with the first roots he had grown since his mother died. Celia Bradley grew tomatoes in a backyard the size of a parking space and gave them away in paper bags. Vanessa Price grew vegetables on a vacant lot and fed 14 families with her bare hands. And Leon, who had spent 2 decades building buildings that reached the sky, finally understood that the most important thing he would ever build was something underground, something no one could see from a penthouse window, something that held. He had parked his car in the wrong place. But for the first time in his entire life, Leon Bradley had ended up exactly where he was supposed to be. The wrong turn was the only right thing he had done in 20 years. And the woman on her knees in the dirt had built more with $847 a month than he had built with $4.7 billion. Not because she had more resources, but because she had something he had lost, and finally after 41 years found again: roots. Thank you for watching. Take a few seconds to subscribe, like, and share this story with people you love. See you on the next one. This story is fiction. The characters' names and events are entirely created to carry a message. But the issue at the heart of it is very real. Over 23 million Americans live in food deserts neighborhoods where fresh, affordable produce is nearly impossible to find. Community gardens across the country are feeding families, improving health outcomes, and rebuilding neighborhoods from the ground up. Often run by volunteers on personal budgets smaller than most people's monthly grocery bill. Many of these gardens are at risk of being lost to urban development and rising land values. If you want to learn more, the USDA Food Access Research Atlas is a good place to start. I wrote this story because I believe the people who quietly build community without waiting for recognition deserve to be seen, not because they need a billionaire to save them, but because the rest of us need to be reminded that real change usually starts with someone's hands in the dirt, not with a meeting on the 38th floor. If you know someone running a community garden, a food pantry, a neighborhood program of any kind, go visit. Ask what they need. Sometimes it is money. Sometimes it is supplies. But most of the time what they really need is someone who shows up at 6 in the morning on a Saturday and says, "Put me to work." That is where it starts. Always has been.